Number 1. Footsteps. This happened when I was on vacation. I don't want to say when or where, because I don't want to draw any negative attention to the area. But it was a very interesting town, that it still had cobblestone streets. During the daytime it was quite busy outside, but the town shut down pretty early. The streets were dead at night and nearly everything was closed. So although I was able to get out and do things during the day, I spent a lot of time at night simply in my hotel room. I am more of an outdoor than an indoor person, so I wasn't able to spend all of my vacation nights sitting in a hotel and watching television. If you're wondering why a person like me would take a vacation in an area like this, it was actually only one of several places I was visiting on that vacation, and it was very nice during the day. Also, I simply was not aware that the town was like this. After doing this for several days, I finally had to get out of the hotel at night and find something to do. Even if nothing was open, I could still go for a nice walk. I noticed a few interesting things as I was walking around the town. At first, it really was dead and very dark. I didn't see any people, and the lights in all the buildings were all off. There were some street lamps, but not many of them, and it was very, very creepy. I could hear my footsteps really clearly on the cobblestone streets with every footstep I took. I had been out for a little bit of time when I noticed what first seemed to me to be an echo of my own footfalls. However, I wasn't at all sure why they would be echoing, so I stopped walking for a moment, and I heard a few footfalls off in the distance. The strange thing to me was that after a couple footfalls, they stopped. I looked around to see if I could see another person out, because it would have been nice to run into someone. I didn't see anyone though, so I figured maybe it was someone walking in one of the alleys then. I began walking again. I'd only taken a few steps, however, when I started hearing that strange echo effect. So once again I stopped walking, and just like the previous time, the other walker took just a few steps, and then stopped walking altogether. It was almost like whomever it was had been trying to either keep time with me, or disguise the footfalls altogether. After looking around again, I still couldn't see anyone. Once I started walking again, I again heard the echo effect start up. Now by this point I was starting to get a little concerned. I didn't know who else was out there, but whoever it was happened to not only be very aware of my footfalls, but was trying to match them for some reason. And I couldn't imagine that whatever reason that was could be good. So I turned around. I decided it wasn't a good idea to tempt fate. If someone was out there and messing with me, it just made more sense for me to head back to my hotel room, so that is exactly what I did. Of course, the footfalls continued to try and match mine. When I sped up a little bit, they sped up a little bit. If I slowed, they slowed. And whenever I looked around in the area they seemed to be coming from, I was unable to see anyone. My simple concern began to turn to fear, and I was about to simply break into a run back to my hotel. But have you ever been scared that you are being followed and for some reason you are afraid to run? It's almost like you feel the person following you is daring you to run, so they can break into a run and chase you. I felt that way when scared before, and I was feeling that way at that moment too. I sped up a little bit, and that was when I finally heard the footfalls start falling faster than my own. I was terrified at that point and burst into a run. I didn't hear the footfalls running after me though. I turned back for a second to look, but didn't see anyone. When I turned back around, I nearly ran into a man who had just turned a corner. I was about to scream, but realized the man was a police officer. I wasn't used to the uniforms the officers had in that country. He asked me if I was okay, and I told him I thought someone might have been following me. And that was when he said the most chilling thing I have ever heard in my life. "You shouldn't be out here after dark, ma'am," the officer told me. "2 women have been murdered at night in the past month. We've been recommending everyone stay at home after dark." I told him I wasn't from the area and was staying in a hotel. He then escorted me back there. That was going to be my last night in that town no matter what, since I was catching a train the following day. I'm just happy it didn't end up being my last night on Earth. There was no way for me to know that the person I heard walking was the murderer, but his weird behavior, matching my footfalls, made it seem quite plausible. Number 2. The View. A few years ago, I got into this relationship with someone I met online. We shared a particular interest and began talking on a forum. Although I hadn't been in a relationship for a while by choice, instead working on myself, we both very quickly began falling for each other. But the difficult part was that he lived across the country from me. He worked in a mine, and he worked really strange hours, so it was sometimes difficult for him to find time to get away. So that meant if we were going to meet, then I was going to have to travel to meet him. I don't really like being away from my home too much, but again, I absolutely adored him, so I went ahead and went. So I'm going to have to explain what it was like being at his place. First, he lived on top of a hill in a very nice neighborhood. He worked in a gold mine, and I suppose from what he told me, he got paid very well. He lived close to a mountain range and had a beautiful view of the Rocky Mountains from his back window. And he had a dog named Buck. He was a small beagle. He was very well behaved. He would have to work long hours in the mine. He would leave and generally be gone for 17 hours. He would come home, eat, we would sleep for a while, and then he would go back to work. He worked in a weird pattern where he did this for 7 days and then had 6 days off. And during the time that he was working, it was mostly just Buck and me. We'd watch TV, I let him run around in the backyard, and I would sit there and watch the view. And God, it was a beautiful view. And side note, the picture on the screen is the actual view. Now, you have to understand that especially with his work schedule, my schedule was all over the place. So many times I would let Buck out at night. He would go out and play around, and I would be there in a chair watching what was happening. I woke up late one night, and Buck needed to go outside. I let him outside without turning the lights on. I went to get a drink, and when I came back, I heard Buck make the worst noise I have ever heard a dog make. I turned on the outside lights, and there was a huge man dressed in black, holding Buck up by the neck. I was terrified, but thank God, my fight-or-flight instinct kicked in. I grabbed the poker from the fireplace, ran out, and knocked the asshole upside the head. He groaned and dropped Buck, who simply laid on the ground. The guy fell over a bit, but he got up quickly. He looked at me, and I swear to God, I thought he was going to attack me, even with the poker in my hand. So I moved to hit him again, and this time buried the poker in his shoulder. And that was it. He ripped it out and then ran off, jumping over the gate, and he was gone. Buck was okay. He was a bit rattled, but no real damage was done. The guy was found and arrested based on my description. He told the police some stupid story that the dog had attacked him, which made no sense since he would have had to jump the gate in order to get into the yard. So if the dog had attacked him, he would have already been trespassing. He tried to sue me for an assault, but the case was never taken up by any lawyers. Some people are deeply stupid. Number 3. The Cabin. This isn't a really long story, but it was definitely a terrifying one. I rented a cabin quite a while ago, so I could have a nice vacation out in the country. I'd never done something like that before, and wasn't really even sure how to go about it. I eventually found an advertisement through an online service, which was likely Craigslist, I don't recall. But it was someone who owned a cabin and was renting it out for certain weeks during the summer. I got in touch with him, although I never met him in person. I paid the rent for the cabin and he gave me the keys and the address. So I set out for a couple weeks, where I thought I would just commune with nature and be at peace. The cabin was nice and secluded. It was exactly the sort of thing I'd been looking for. So I settled in, and I had a really good time. After being in the cabin for about a week, I was going to bed pretty early one night. Something woke me up, and for a few moments, I wasn't sure exactly what it was, but then I became very aware of it. There was a light coming from under the door, and there were people talking in the other room. I can never really tell you how terrifying this was. I felt a shockwave go through my body, and I was numb for a few moments. I couldn't really think of what to do, and finally I realized that I needed to be quiet and try to listen to what the intruders were saying, rather than immediately assume the worst. So I listened, and I regretted very much what I heard. There were two distinct voices, and although I cannot tell you the exact words they were saying, they were talking about someone being in the cabin. One told the other to go into the kitchen and grab a knife from the cutting block. I was terrified. I was absolutely positive that I was going to lose my life in the next few minutes. And it seemed like time was moving both really fast and really slow at the same time. I couldn't make up my mind to do anything quick enough that would result in me getting away from the intruders. The bedroom door opened, and the light came on. I saw an older man, maybe around 60 years old, holding a gun pointed right at me. Beside him was a woman of his age, holding a kitchen knife. But the strangeness of the appearance of these burglars wasn't what caught me off guard. What really surprised me was how afraid both of them looked. I don't want to go into too much detail about how things were worked out between the three of us. Suffice to say that no one got hurt. They were the owners of the cabin. The person who rented it to me wasn't someone they even knew of. They were simply coming to spend some time in their forest cabin when they noticed my car after arriving late. They were as scared as I had been. Fortunately, they didn't hold anything against me. We both tried to press charges against the man who rented the place, but we were never able to find him. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. I want to thank everyone for the well wishes for the past few days. Again, it was more of a food poisoning, and some people made some comments about me getting sick a lot, which, yeah, it seems I do. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that I have severe allergies and some other issues. But I'm doing fine now. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please feel free to hit the subscribe button and the bell below, or wait for the icon of Ichigo the cat that will appear at the end of this closing. Leave me a comment to let me know what you thought of the video, and consider sharing it with someone you think might enjoy it. If you have an original story you like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please email it to the address provided in the description. But most importantly, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.